Welcome to Season 4 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor, and each week I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and product creators to decode the myths, share knowledge and give you an insight into the retail industry. So grab your cup of tea, sit back, relax and listen in to Season 4 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. Today I'm joined by a guest who is an ephemeral retailing specialist. Currently working as a senior consultant for Universe Retail in Paris, her retail career started in the fashion industry. Now, with over 2 decades experience, she's worked closely with fashion brands at retail and management levels. This researcher and marketing and retail lecturer has international retail teaching experience, having attended universities and business schools in Beirut, Istanbul, London, and Paris. Her research and publications cover retail, fashion management, and ephemeral retail. Ghalia Boustani, welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Hello, Melissa. I'm really happy to be with you today.
I'm so pleased we're getting to sit down, and I already know, and my apologies in advance now for everyone listening and watching, is that your background, especially your academic background in retail, is really what draws me in here. And I've been reading some of your articles, so I am so excited as someone that's kind of moved into that educational piece. I am so excited to be chatting to you today. So let's start off in the way we always do on the Retail Tea Break podcast, in the time that it takes to boil a kettle, which I'm told is 2 minutes. Tell us about you and then what sparked your interest in pop-up stores.
Well, it was a gloomy day on 2009 when I had to choose actually a topic for my thesis. And then I was really looking at all these retail formats at the time, related to concept stores, lots of vintage shopping emerging, especially in Notting Hill. Like, we were reading all of these beautiful articles about these beautiful stores, but then I was wondering, would it be relevant for me to study something that already has been studied and researched by many? So I take the tube and I pick up one newspaper, the ones that we used to like take on the
free ones, the free ones. Yeah,
exactly. And I open the page, and it's really like in a very simple way. I start like looking at the pages, and then suddenly I fall on an article saying like the new pop-up store is opening in East London. Pop-up store, I mean, the name is so weird. What is this store? Let me go and like look at this topic. So I sat down like for 5 or 10 minutes. I was intrigued. And then in the evening, I came back and did some research, and I said like, wow, this is something that is going to be big. Let me maybe suggest this topic for my thesis, and let me start looking at pop-up stores. I think this is the future of retail. I was really excited at the time, but I'm still are.
That's crazy, because that was years ago. I mean, that was so long ago. And I think it's probably going to surprise a lot of listeners and a lot of watchers that actually the term, or even the actual shop version of a pop-up shop in our main streets and our high streets and in our shopping centres, has been around for so long, because it seems like a very new thing.
Exactly. I'm even surprised when I talk to people, or maybe we would say we have the tendency to say that older people or generation are not acquainted with new retail formats. Or maybe our generation might be less acquainted if they are into shopping or less into shopping. However, when I go sometimes to teach, I have maybe 10 or 15 years difference between the students that I'm teaching. And when I ask them about pop-up stores, many say that they don't know what it is or haven't visited a pop-up store. But looking back at history, retail history, pop-up stores have been there for quite some time. If I had discovered them in 2008, they had already been there since 1999. But the thing is that in 2008, the recession began, and it hit Europe. and the high street needed something new and different. Pop-up stores appear to be like the saviors of retail and retail formats, and it was a good instance or a good moment to say like, okay, there is a crisis on the high street. The high street needs something to shake it up, and pop-up stores appear to be like what do we say, the shining
they're like a shining beacon at the moment, aren't they? Yeah, absolutely. They're drawing the people in, supposedly.
Exactly. So like 2008 is that I believe important instance that we should look at when it comes to pop-up stores.
That's amazing. Again, I'm really shocked that, as you said, they've been around so long at this stage, but I suppose they came kicking and screaming onto the market back for the recession. And there seems to have been that re-emergence again now, kind of post-COVID years. But you've written incredible. And again, I'm going to pop the links into the show notes. I find them absolutely incredible academic papers on ephemeral stores, or pop-up stores, as we're calling them today. So from your point of view, tell us what makes a pop-up store? What is a pop-up store?
I'm inclined to say that pop-up stores could be easily confused with seasonal stores or other temporary stores. So to stay away from this confusion, it's very important to put up a mix of several ingredients together to make up a pop-up store. To be eligible to be called a pop-up store, this physical or online format should be appearing in a very specific time and timing with a chosen location that speaks to a target audience and that has something different in terms of retail atmosphere, something that gives it an added value. And most importantly, if a pop-up store should be called a pop-up store, it's because it presents customers with lots of activities or actually events that makes it more dynamic and less dull or less dull. I think great
dull and boring.
And dull. Exactly. Putting these all together is important. And on top of all of these variables that I have listed, it's very important that a pop-up store, one or many, have to have a clear objective, because you cannot confuse pop-up stores with other stores. You have to have a very clear objective to what you intend to deliver or communicate through that instance. Therefore, having this objective would guide you into everything related to the creation of the physical atmosphere and all of the events that you will be adding on to give life to that atmosphere.
So I'm sitting here thinking, this is interesting. We've had an explosion in Ireland of pop-up stores, and now I'm going to use that term quite loosely, because actually what you're describing is exciting, has events. It isn't just a temporary retail store, which I think an awful lot, again, a lot of listeners will be thinking that's the version I think many of us have become used to seeing.
Actually, yes. We had come across a period when pop-up stores became very vulgarized. I mean, let's open up a store from December 7th to December 28th. Let's put our products, like take advantage from the season, like the Christmas or end of year season or period, and let's sell our products. But does this really make from that instance a pop-up store? Not at all, because there are lots of other factors that we're missing here. If this is called a pop-up store, then what do we call a seasonal stand? If we call this a pop-up store, then what do we call a Christmas fair? Or so these questions have to be really raised. And at some point, we used that term in a very vulgarized way. And I use the term vulgarized because every time we appeared for a limited period of time, we said like, yes, we're doing a pop-up store. However, we failed to integrate all of the other elements related to communications, adding on events, getting in touch or closer with the audience, maybe informing, teaching, experiencing, experimenting. All of these things have to be are essential parts or integral parts of a pop-up store's composition. And when they are not there, it does not mean that we're doing a pop-up. So this is really important.
That is interesting. And I think maybe that's one of these key pieces of the jigsaw that is missing for an awful lot of these. And again, to use the term, the vulgar way an awful lot of us are using the term pop-up stores. But you used the word magical in one of your publications, and this got me excited because again, and now having heard you explain the real term pop-up and what it should look like, they should be magical, like they should be exciting. It's about, I suppose, for the consumer, capturing that moment in time. And then, of course, no wonder then the consumer wants to be part of it. So apart from going to buy from the brand, is it the atmospherics then that drive us to go and explore in these pop-ups? Or are we going because our friends are going, because it's almost become quite tribal, that it's the place to be seen, to take our Instagram shot, to do our TikTok dance or whatever it might be? Do we need to go and hang out there? Or what is it? Why are we going, do you think?
It's very interesting that you have raised that question, and it's very normal for us to go into that line of thought. When we were young, or when we have youngsters at home, we tend to sit with them and read a book. And then when we read a book, they would imagine all the scenes, all the elements that we have been talking about, and they would have to create or envision that scene in their heads. Now, with a store, we are trying to tell a story, and instead of letting you do the effort to imagine it, we're also putting you in a context, in an imaginative context, for you to live it. It's really important then to see that the space would elevate from being a simple place of presentation to being really an immersive and engaging space. In that sense, everything that I have put for you, all of these atmospheric variables, I have put them for you to engage with them, to feel, to smell, to touch, and then to interact, to react. I'm giving you the possibility to be your own hero when you're visiting that store. This being said, with pop-up stores, brands have gone one step further with their relationships with clients, telling them that if you go to my location on Regent Street or on Oxford Street, I wouldn't allow you to be freely moving into the store, but when you come to my pop-up store, like, you're really free to do whatever you want. Like, we're breaking those rules. So to add some more information on everything that you have raised earlier, when we go to a store, there are three variables that we study in academia, but we can see, like, as consumers: the ambience, design, and social factors. The social factor, like the human or people factor, is a really important variable that pop-up stores have invested in dearly, because they know if customers go and experience what they are experiencing alone or with others, alone with others and with the brand, they would create a greater sense or a stronger sense of community. What you have called tribe could be something that we manifest more or less when we go into a store. This is a decision that the brand takes, and hence the idea of having a clear objective before going into a pop-up store project. And it gives the customer this sense of communicating with the brand and being at closer proximity at the brand. And if customers are having this beautiful feeling, which allows them to live that story and create their own moment of magic through the digitalization of the store, I give them also the opportunity to have their own voice communicated online or within the store. So yes, there is this Instagrammable wall somewhere behind me, because I want my customer to give their opinion. Are you happy? Take a picture, post it, tag your friend, tag me, and I will reshare. It's always a win-win situation for customers. They feel that, like, yeah, I can do whatever I want with the brand, but with the brand, we're creating for him user-generated content, which is really good. Moreover, I would like to add that brands take this opportunity to get closer to customers. Today, we have a lot of data that we collect on the market, but this hot, on the spot data is more valuable than any other statistical data that I could have collected anywhere else or bought from third parties. So, if brands are clever enough, they would use every instance of the customer's journey inside the store and try to also get qualitative output from him to make sure that they have really understood what their customers are thinking, feeling, and help them enhance their next or upcoming action. I hope I didn't talk a lot.
No, I have to say, and I know you can't see me at home, the way my mind is now traveling at 1,000,000 miles an hour, kind of thinking of that and actually realizing that the huge benefits, and I don't just mean on the surface of having a pop-up store and it generating money for the brands, but the freedom it gives the creative team, the design team, to be able to really truly express themselves based on the brand's values. Setting up a truly immersive pop-up store is incredible for a part of the creative team, but as you say, this really lets the brand see how the impact, how their brand can really impact the consumer live in front of them. As you say, if a consumer is free to explore, to express themselves, to really interact with the product or the brand, that's gold dust. That's something you can't buy in marketing. So the true meaning of a pop-up here, if it's done well by the sounds of it, pays off dividends. Like, there's your return on investment straight away.
And more than that, I would say, like, return on investment, yes, if your initial objective was to
Yeah.
sell. However, sometimes developing a pop-up store project would be to create other types of returns. So maybe we should also think of return on experience. Return on experience is a new term that allows brands to also calculate differently, because the investment of a pop-up store could be seen as an investment as a new retail format, but also a marketing spend. It really depends on how the brand is initially calculating their pop-up store initiatives. Are they considering them as legitimate as any other point of contact? Or are they testing them and therefore considering them under their marketing spend? So today also we should be really careful when we have set initially these objectives of our pop-up store. Are we calculating something in particular related to sales, or do our sales or effects translate in another channel? And this comes to raise another question. In that omni-channel context, if a brand has many touch points, should I be naive and go to my manager and tell him I'm going to calculate how my pop-up stores did here, right now? Or if I had included outlets to allow my customers to experience something in the pop-up store and purchase from the online site or the physical store, am I allowed to calculate a return on investment related to the pop-up store? So food for thought. I wouldn't be able to answer this or that, because it always depends on the pop-up store itself and the actions that we need to take, and what result we are hoping to get from that action.
That's a really great lesson, and I actually think that's a really great basic retail lesson that I think we're so driven these days to just look at sales, look at the bottom line, look at that kind of churn of cash coming through. But as you say, like, the return could be, are we having a true digital experience? Is it a true omni-channel experience? What was that initial objective? And it comes back to that initial thing you said of, why are we doing this? Whereas certainly pop-ups I've been into recently, the boring ones, and I hate to call them that really are just there for kind of brand awareness and making sales. But it's lovely then that the true meaning of pop-up is about looking at these other data points. And again, when you have the data, turning in the right way, when it's coming through to the single source of looking at this customer and what they need from us, again, it's gold dust. And I think it's incredible that we can use these pop-ups in such a new way and be allowed to do that as retailers, that it isn't always just about the cash coming in. There are so many other points here, as you said, whether it's in the customer journey, whether it's the way they look at the brand, they feel the brand, they see the brand, just the metrics are phenomenal. So that's all the good stuff. I hate to ask this question, but while I have you and you're the expert, are there any disadvantages do you feel to having a pop-up?
Of course. I mean, of course. Yes, as anything in retail, you always have the plus side and the downside. I mean, today pop-up stores, if we're reusing this term vulgarized, we think that pop-up stores would come and save the world for us.
Yeah.
But actually they don't. And we cannot blame a pop-up store if it didn't yield a positive return from the first time. I mean, first of all, you have to be very aware before starting your pop-up store experimentation that this one-off thingy is not a hit and run. You have to understand that if you want to do one pop-up store, due to its ephemerality, customers might not have the chance to come visit it or maybe access it or get in touch with it. So you have to think that you have to frequently pop up to create a certain effect. Moreover, if you're popping up differently, you need to keep the dynamic. Keeping the dynamic means putting more events, thinking of new things, adding on more novelty. Creativity is expensive, and developing that is expensive. It's not expensive as developing a physical store, that we know it. However, we should not neglect the fact that a good pop-up or a pop-up store that is done in a good way could cost a good amount of money. So this investment has to be carefully thought because we don't want to be throwing our money away. Should we have, again, thought well of what objective are we having from our pop-up store, considered the good timing and the good duration, put in the right events, put in the right offering, merchandise or capsule collection, you name it, whatever you want to do, you have to calculate it well, because if you want your pop-up store to have a positive effect, it has to be in the right condition, in the right micro environment. And this has to be repeated several times, because at a certain point, remember the basics of advertising? We used to talk about frequency. I mean, pop-up store is a communications tool. And if we don't show customers a certain frequency that will not bore them, of course, keep the dynamic coming, keep them wanting something new and different, they would forget or even did not notice, they wouldn't notice that we did a pop-up in the first place. So I might really be inclined to say that it costs money, it needs to be frequent, and it needs to always present something new and different. More importantly, we need to make sure that our pop-up is an instance that creates good content for us. So before planning our pop-up, we should also plan our communications. This being said, to start maybe raising some teasing campaigns about an upcoming product or a pop-up that is going to present that product, you name it, you have to communicate it. Content is costly, communicating the content is costly, and so on. So there are lots of costs incurred, and we need to be really aware of them because they have to go hand in hand. We have to always plan. So there is the pre-phase, there is the during phase, and there is the post phase. And we cannot omit any of the phases. So this means that we have to have the right team, the right dedication, time, and capital related to that. Sometimes it is negative, yes, but all of this done well would be leading to a positive effect. So we don't want to sell a dream when we're working with pop-ups. I have worked with lots of brands who have called in to say like, Ghalia, we would like to do this or that. We have this project in mind. And when I explain the truth about developing a pop-up store, like they are not very happy to listen. But we have to say like, this is the truth about it. But once you got in the business of doing the pop-up store right, like you get on the wave, and hopefully you will pick up on positive experiences and results later on.
Oh, and I'm sure they do, especially if they're coming to you for advice. So look, we know that the retail industry is agile. We've spoken about this a bit briefly here, because as you said, you were reading about the first one you came across back just post that kind of 2008 recession. So obviously recently that recession, we've had a bit of a pandemic since then. And then we've had this real emergence and I suppose domination of e-commerce now for the last 2 years. So looking to the future then, do you think the pop-up store will have helped the industry kind of continue to grow and develop? Like, do you think it's always going to be there?
Actually, we have seen the extent to which we read articles around maybe 2014, 15, and up to 18, like saying the high street is
oh, you're dead. That's it.
dead.
We were all out of jobs. It was over.
Yeah, like physical retail is dead. Like, yes, boring retail is dead, and that 100%. We know it. And then e-commerce certainly replaced a very big chunk of physical retail's incapacities, in the sense that with online commerce, like done right as well, because online commerce could be done not right. It gave us the possibility to present more merchandise, an extensive catalog, a 24-hour shopping experience, 7-day shopping experience, like you name it. But we lacked the physical touch and encounter with our products, because customers really like to go out. We are human beings. We want to go out. So around 2019 and before the pandemic, we were already raising the questions. Now the pandemic came in and it pushed us even to go further with technology, and e-commerce gained a greater place in the retail scene. But the physical space also gained a very important place, because all of the brands, like digital native brands certainly, and brands who were really investing in their e-commerce websites, said, I need to come and meet my customers somewhere, somehow, and a physical store would be a great idea. Now, how do pop-up stores come in handy? Pop-up stores are great ways to personify brands that do not have a physical presence, but that need a presence maybe from time to time. Let me explain myself. If you're selling swimming suits, do you need to be on the high street 12 months per year? Maybe not. If you're selling ski like gear, do you need to be on the high street all year long? No. So with temporary retailing, we say like, let's reinforce on our presence on the high street when it is needed and most relevant to customers. So this is a great thing. And on the other hand, if we have closed down many retail stores, our physical stores could be really immersive, experiential. We could put forward our new products, maybe capsule collections, collabs, etc. And all of the rest could be found online. Again, with this omni-channel experience, coming into a store today, I could purchase that t-shirt. If I need a basic, I know that I could find it online. I could order it, receive it here, receive it at home. Like, the options today are many. And with pop-up stores, you would say, okay, let's push that experience further and not only give our customers a beautiful environment to shop in, let us give him something great. Let's do a rendezvous. Let's meet up with him. Let's celebrate with him. So the pop-up store becomes really a place of celebration, a living place, a conversational place between brands and customers. Certainly, we need to live as brands. We need to sell, but this does not mean that every pop-up store is dedicated for selling, because selling could happen again anywhere at any time. And this idea had already been elaborated. So I believe that with that logic, today we understand that e-commerce will always be there, but pop-up stores also complete e-com brands and their need to have a personification or a physical presence on the high street.
That's a really interesting way of putting it, and I've certainly never heard it like that. That absolutely, the pop-up can sit alongside your freestanding, ordinary physical store. It can sit alongside your e-com shop, and it's just a marriage of them all. And I suppose really it's about reframing the idea of a pop-up as this truly immersive, experiential retail experience, that excitement, that magic that you talked about earlier. But it sits beautifully then along every other channel that a really good brand has. And it's there, as you said, quite simply to meet the customer. And I think it's really good to frame it that way. And I think, again, an awful lot of people are really going to start looking at pop-ups differently, because now it makes sense. If I'm really honest, it really does make sense.
I hope so. I mean, yes, and I have even quoted many times pop-up stores as being place of rendezvous. Like, like, imagine you're going on a date at the first time. Like, the excitement, you're making yourself look really beautiful, you're at your best all the time. And imagine how a brand would be every time it's going on a first date with its pop-up store. I wouldn't see it in any other way than that. So if brands really understand the dynamic, if brands go like away, like they take a little moment and they go away from their old management styles, I believe that they could really take advantage from operating pop-up stores. But you have to have a clear vision and strategy and stop operating from the inside, like in silos, like we do marketing, you do sales, we do this, we do that. We have to really think in a holistic way and integrate pop-up stores into our retail strategy.
Oh, it sounds absolutely the way forward. And I really hope now people have taken some ideas from today, because it's just a gorgeous way, as you said, to rendezvous with your customers. So to sum up then, Ghalia, any kind of key takeaways then for a brand that might be sitting there thinking we're midway through the year at this stage, if they were planning a pop-up for, for this year, for next year, any key takeaways for them if they're thinking of opening one?
Key takeaway, I would always say, like, prepare. It's really important, like, to research, to prepare, especially if you're doing pop-up stores as a first experience. And might I add that we learn from doing our pop-up stores, and we should not be afraid from moving further and developing and learning every time we do a pop-up store, because we should be open to the idea of trying, failing, trying again, enhancing, doing something and going into different direction. However, I would always insist on the fact of staying true to your brand identity and brand's values. Even if you diversify your pop-up stores and pop-up experiences, they always have to link with a very unique thread. And this thread is that of the brand and its identity. Once you stay on that line, once you have your clear objectives related to each and every pop-up store that you will do, I think that you will be on the right way of investing better in pop-up stores and hopefully having a better customer connection and experience related to your brand.
And that's what it's all about at the end of the day, isn't it? So it's such an incredible channel to be able to offer the customer. So look, final question then, and I could definitely talk to you all day. So you're already booked. Let's do this again, because as an educator and as a retailer, I've found this absolutely fascinating. I suppose, yeah, final question then. What's coming up for you over the next few months?
Well, guess what? A new book on pop-up retail.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Sold.
Thank you. Actually, I think that there's a lot to say about pop-up stores. I have already written 2 books on pop-up retail that were pretty much academic in their style and their presentation. But after having worked closely and talked with many retailers who worked with pop-up stores, I believe that it's the time to reflect these voices into one manuscript that could benefit many other managers and professionals into understanding the reality of pop-up retail.
Absolutely.
And how this could be really beneficial to their brands. So hopefully, by next year, we'll be having the new baby.
Oh, well, then we'll have to watch the space. Then we'll have to have you back, because certainly I think if today and this last half hour has been anything to go by, I'm sure it's going to whet a lot of people's appetites, and they're definitely going to want to read more. So we'll definitely have to have you back on the Retail Tea Break podcast next year, and we'll talk about the book then. So if you've enjoyed today's podcast episode, please like and share it. There are so many incredible takeaways in today's episode. Remember, you can listen back to past Retail Tea Break podcast episodes on your favorite platform or on YouTube, and then connect with myself on Ghalia on LinkedIn, or follow the Retail Advisor and Ghalia across social media. And I'm going to pop all the links then in our show notes as well. So Ghalia, again, I can't thank you enough for today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for loving retail as much as I do.
Thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.